What's up, you beauties? Welcome back to HW Hockey, the place where Flyers talk is always real, raw, and a little rowdy. This is episode 9.2. And I'm your host, Jim Iacovone, joined as always by Jack Smith. If you're watching live on YouTube, do us a solid. Smash the subscribe button. Help us on our quest to 2,000 subscribers. Ring the bell. Join the conversation in the chat. For all the podcast listeners out there, hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. So you're first in line when new episodes drop. Okay, by now, I hope that you've listened to part one before you've come over to listen to part two. If you're back for part two, welcome back. If you're brand new, go listen to part one. We'll catch you back here when you're done. We were kind of dissecting the state of the organization press conference, and I'm going to get that video back up in a second here, Jack. All right, Jack, we're going to dive right back into this. We're not going to waste any time. We're going to try to do this under an hour. So I believe the next question on the board is, Keith, you are a contemporary of Rick Tocchet, I believe. Let's see if I'm right here. Here we go.
Sustain that for years to come.
Keith, you were a contemporary of Rick when his playing days,
Yep.
Danny as well. Will you be reaching out to him to kind of get his input on player development, transactions, and so forth?
Yeah, not a lot. Coach is coach. So, but obviously, if he has an experience with somebody, yes. Like you talk to everybody you can before you go out and make a transaction to add somebody. It'd be foolish not to. But his number one priority will be to coach this team.
Maybe the most interesting response thus far. Jack, let's hear your thoughts on that first.
Coach is coach, Jim. I mean, I agree. I would assume there is some kind of brain trust that includes Tocchet, but he's clearly number 3 or 4 on the poll there. It's Jonesy and Briere are building this team, and I'm sure when they brought Tocchet into the fold, it was explained to them, this is what we're going for. This is what we're going to do. This is what we would like from you if you're, accept the position and whatnot. And that's really how it is, unless there's like sustained success for years. And maybe the coach is like, okay, well, since my system is clearly working, I would like you to go get me a big time winger or something like that, or a big winger, literally physically big winger. We need to be more physical. Go get me more physical players, something like that. It's his first year. This team's coming out of a rebuild. Let's just see if things work first. These are the players. We're going to continue to get better. And at the end of the day, that's where it should be, regardless of the success of the coach. So yeah, I want him in the loop, of course, but I don't want him, from rumors we heard about Torts and players that he wanted, and demanding Luchenko probably stay the whole season last year. We can't have that. Like, there is a hierarchy for a reason. Be respectful, but Briere's running the show when it comes to who's on this team, and that's how it should be.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting response because we don't usually see Keith Jones, in my opinion, sort of talk. I don't want to say it was a very definitive answer, but you could see in that moment with that question, he knew he needed to be concise, right? There was no mincing of words there. Coach is coach. And maybe before we heard a lot of, it's a team, it's Briere, it's Jonesy, it's Hilferty and Tortorella all in that circle. And now I think maybe they've learned a bit, right? The coach is supposed to coach, right? He doesn't have so much say in what kind of player you're going to acquire, what kind of player you're going to draft. Of course, they're going to listen to his input, but Briere's going to put the roster together, and Tocchet's got to coach him up, right? So to me, that was the most interesting response thus far, and I liked it. But we'll see. Does Rick Tocchet like that answer? Did they talk about that before they hired him? You would assume so, right?
Yeah, and again, you're right with the Torts stuff and all that, and I would assume he does. And the only time this is even a conversation is when the team's like uberly successful. Yeah. Because obviously the system's working, and maybe certain players move on, and you'd like to replace them with similar players. But I just see too much goodwill, at least right now, with everybody that I don't even think this is going to be a problem. With Torts, yeah, it'll be a problem probably anywhere. With Tocchet, with these guys, I just don't see it being an issue. But you're right. He was asked a direct question. He's the president. He needs to lay in a way. It sounds dramatic when I say this, but lay down the law a bit. Yeah, this is how it is. There's no question. This is how it is. And I'm glad he did, honestly.
Okay, let's go to our next question here.
More update on Tyson's arm?
I know he's doing well, so that's the great news there. But I'll leave that for Danny when he talks. I think he'll talk next week probably. But yeah, Tyson's on pace to be there for us when the season starts. But Danny will get more into it.
All right, pretty simple question, pretty simple response there. Forster will be back before the season starts. Good news, right?
Fantastic news from what we were hearing. I mean, that's the plan. I hope it stays the plan. I hope he, picks up in the offseason like nothing ever happened. That'll be the absolute best news, especially if we're talking about being better this season and as a team, but also Forster's a guy who we've been a fan of his seasons so far. But one thing I want to see from him is to start the season off strong because he's been a little slow. Being hurt would be a huge blow to that. So him having a normal season will be great. At least start to it.
I would agree. Hit the ground running here. Okay, let's see what we have next.
Talked about in the past couple of years how when you get to a certain point and if the team's at a certain spot, you kind of know that you have to look at the future.
Yes.
Right? And you're not doing that this year.
Yeah.
But how do you get the buy-in from the players if they go through a bad stretch of games to let them know?
Yeah, you just communicate it to them. I mean, that's the great thing about Danny playing the game. Fortunately, I did, and again, Hilf's around, sending that message to the players where they have a certain amount of trust that what we're doing is in their best interest, and you just have to talk to them about it. It's not that complicated. It's really just about being in it together, working together from the top all the way down through the entire team to make sure that we get it right, and that's the plan. Our plan is to get it right for our fans, number one, and to make sure that we communicate with our players constantly on where we're headed. And I believe that will work.
All right, so I like the response. And just to reiterate the question here, the question was asked, Keith, you talked about in the past couple of years, when you get to a certain point and if the team's at a certain spot, you kind of know what you have to look at the future. And you're not doing that this year, but how do you get the buy-in from the players if they go through a bad stretch of games to let them know? I thought Jonesy answered that question well. It's simple communication. And, look, at the base of everything, especially great leadership, and all great organizations, communication is the number one key, and it's the number one it's such a fundamental thing. Communication. You'd be surprised how many organizations, groups, how many leaders are bad communicators. When they hired and brought Jonesy in, that was the number one thing to me. This is a guy that, in my opinion, exudes positivity. He's a people guy. And so when he said communication is basically the key there, it was of no surprise to me. What did you think about that response, Jack?
Well, the whole communication thing is kind of, when it comes to the coaches, the big thing. Shot at Torts, obviously, but not really. It's just something that should be there. And the players today, as much as I'm old school and think you should play for your coach and all that stuff, players today, they need that communication. And I can't change the players of today. So the fact that they got a coach who is known for communicating, they all understand the community, because that is a way you get out of it. What are you supposed to do? Get yelled at when you're already playing terrible? When you're trying to win, I don't think that's a good thing. Tell me what's going on. How do we fix it? Let's do this together like a team. So I couldn't, when you're now at this stage of the game, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. They were given every excuse in the book before, and they had that was the losing time. Now it's the winning time. What can we do to help you succeed, help the team succeed? And it's very good team speak. but it's also a necessity that we haven't had in a while, and I think the team's going to appreciate it.
Yep. Okay, let's move on. I think the next question is also to Jonesy about Danny Briere. So let's listen to the question and the response.
How would you evaluate Danny's performance so far, and what have you maybe learned about him 2 years into this that maybe you didn't know when you guys
Yeah,
became?
I think both Hilf and I are very impressed by Danny. He is an extremely intelligent, dedicated person with his job. Methodical, thoughtful, sharing and the way that he does things, not just with us, but with our Flyer community, with you guys as well. He deals from a position of honesty and has a really good plan in place that he has so far executed very well. So I'm extremely happy with Danny.
And Kev, I would agree with that. His attention to detail and his willingness to allow analytics come into his thinking, along with the eye test, is very impressive. And I agree, from a communications point of view, he's been terrific.
All right, Jack, you want to take the first part there from Jonesy?
Yeah, I mean, just glowing reviews. Not that he's going to go on there and kill the guy, but like, let's be realistic. Everything he said is true. He's been open and honest about everything. It's hard to look at anything he's done and be upset with it. You know, like trades, free agent signings that have panned out, draft picks, you know, all that stuff. I think the only thing you can look at and be like, well, some of these contracts he signed aren't the best, but they're not horrible either. So it's like, he seems like he's on his way to one day he's going to be, hopefully it's with us, like a GM of the year kind of candidate. He came in right away and just seems to understand. We saw some baffling moves by Fletcher and Hextall. I mean, I can't say that at all with Danny. I really can't. I think he totally understands it. He gets it. It's a long way to go. These guys got his back, and it's not team speak. They believe that, and I think it's all in the evidence. And yeah, I learned a few things with both guys, like the attention to details, how much of the analytics he allows to come into his thinking. But it's something I kind of assumed, but it's nice to hear it. You know, I'm not an analytics guy, but I'm not saying throw it out either. You know, so I'm glad it's a new age league. I'm glad he's taking in information from everywhere he can. I love attention to detail. That's huge when you're a GM. And I couldn't agree more with Jonesy, and it's all, the proof is all there over the last two and a half years.
Yeah, so I'm going to just kind of highlight one thing he said when he said he deals from a position of honesty and has a really good plan in place that he has so far executed very well. And, you know, when I think you're doing the right things, number one, I always thought that Briere was just kind of a genuine guy. He comes off a little bit shy, but for the most part, I think he chooses his words carefully. But for the most part, he comes off as an honest guy. And just because you choose which words to say doesn't make you dishonest. You're also choosing which words not to say. But I appreciate when somebody is careful about, you know, what they say. So it's also easy to be honest when you're doing the right things. And I think we both believe, or at least hopefully the majority of the fans can see the plan. It's there in plain sight. It has been. We've talked about it for a while. So I feel good about that with Briere. And then it kind of made me laugh because Hilferty, you know, he spoke kind of like a businessman there. He's not trying to be something that he's not. He's not a talent evaluator, right? He doesn't know what Briere's doing there. He knows how to count dollars and cents, kind of thing. He's there for, hey, what do you guys need on the business side, kind of deal. So when he mentioned attention to detail, willingness to allow analytics to come in, his eye test, yada yada, you know, that's him speaking from the business perspective, which was kind of funny to see. Okay, next point coming up here. Here we go.
Some regression in last year. Do you feel any of that at all is from the team was kind of worn out at all by Torts?
Well, first of all, if we can go back to all the things I said.
Real quick, because that takes balls to ask that. These are the guys that hired Torts. So interested. Oh, I'm sorry. These guys didn't hire Torts. I think Fletcher was still around for that, right?
Yeah, he had to hire a group of people to tell him that Torts was the best hire at the time.
Yeah, interesting. Because these are the guys that kept saying that Torts is in their circle. He's one of them. So I'm really kind of curious to hear their response here. Let's go.
About Torts since I've been here, and I have a great deal of respect for Torts as a person and as a coach. I think everything he did here can be viewed as foundational to what we're trying to build. And part of that was an expectation that players would be in the best shape they could be in, would compete every second on the ice. And I think that's something, you've told me this consistently, Jonesy, that this will pay off for these players later, having played for John Tortorella. And so we're grateful for that. I can't speak to that last year. I think there were a lot of factors. The one thing he did say to me at the beginning of last year is the third year's sometimes hard, for maybe the reason you said. The players are hearing the same thing over and over again. But I have nothing but great things to say about the job that Torts did, and can't answer whether that impacted the slide from the year before last year.
Dan, I respect everything that everybody here has done. However, when you opened this up, you said success is not the playoffs. How can
Hang on a second. We're going to get to that. I think that's Howard Eskin, who,
Yeah, that's how.
for whatever reason, he's doing Flyer stuff now. I guess because maybe he's not allowed in the Eagles or Phillies, but we'll get to that in a second, Jack. But what were your thoughts there on what Hilferty was talking about?
In a way, I feel vindicated. It's something I was trying to explain anytime I took flack for, I won't even want to say defending Torts, but kind of understanding it. And it's like, I get it. He's a piece of trash. He's garbage. He's an a-hole. I get all that. Like, that's why they're not trying to win now. Like, I don't care about specific stats, and he certainly didn't ruin any player's development. That's outrageous. Hilferty said it, but Jonesy's the one who told him. It's hard to really put it into words and make you understand, but that time they spent with Torts, it will show dividends down the road. I'm telling you, that was the point. That's why they stuck with him. He wasn't their guy. They could have had one bad season and said, okay, we're going to move it on to somebody else. But they understood the foundation he was helped building with he mentioned being in shape and things like that, but also coming together as a locker room, which is one of the better full locker rooms we've seen in a while, at least from the outside looking in, among other things. Like, I could go on forever, but like I was a glowing review of Torts, really. And yeah, if we were trying to win and he did the things he did, that is a completely different conversation. He was not here for that. And I can't speak for year 3 or anything like that. I mean, it makes sense to me, but I really don't know. But yeah, I feel vindicated in a sense, and I couldn't agree more. And that's those of us who aren't like 21 years old trying to talk about the Flyers kind of get that.
I was surprised kind of how honest Hilferty was there, and like, look, this is a known thing for Torts, and I think coaches similar to Torts. But I was surprised that he mentioned that Jonesy said, hey, year 3, this is kind of when things fall off because the players.
Did Jonesy say that, or did Torts say that?
This is what Jonesy said about Torts.
Did he say that Torts said that, or Jonesy said
that? That Jonesy said that about Tortorella, that year 3 could be tough under Torts.
Oh, gotcha.
Players start to tune him out.
Yeah, especially if you're losing.
Yeah, so it was kind of like these guys know, like the fans talk about the like John Tortorella and the Flyers, like the Flyers don't know what the hell we're doing. Like, they know what's going on way more than we do. They know which coaches, when they hit a wall with the locker room, they know what to look for. They know the signs. And, whether Torts quit on the Flyers or the Flyers let him go before he could quit on the Flyers, either way, Torts is gone. Fresh year coming. But I thought it was interesting how honest Hilferty was there. And I do think it's good that he mentioned, this is going to benefit these guys later on.
Yeah, I'm glad he was honest. Torts isn't here, and it was such a tough situation at the end of last year. There's a lot of questions still, so he might as well be. It was so respectful. It's not like, you throw him under the bus or anything. So,
I almost thought he threw Jonesy under the bus there. for kind of telling everybody, hey, this is Jonesy told me Torts usually runs into a wall here. But okay, all right. Howard Eskin asking about playoffs, I think, here. So let's see what this guy has to say.
You explain that to fans, which is what they crave. Flyers fans, that's what they crave. How do you explain that to people, that success is not the playoffs?
So Howard, here's how I look at it. I've started every public conversation I've had. As a fan, last year I was disappointed we didn't make the playoffs. The year before I was disappointed we didn't make the playoffs. And the year before that, although I got here too late. So as that fan, a true Philly fan, I want nothing more to compete for the playoffs. And we're doing everything we can. I think the point that Jonesy made about now we're adding, and you only add when you think you have a shot to be in the playoff conversation. So what I'm saying is, with this long process, this rebuild that we agree we're going to do in a thoughtful and constructive way, bringing young players in and adding other players, it might mean the playoffs, but all I know, we're gonna come together as a group at the end of the season and say, okay, did the players you mentioned, did they continue to improve? Do we feel we are beginning to get the pieces we need to have that sustainable team, a sustainable level of excellence that leads to playoffs year after year after year?
All right. Pretty good response. What did you think there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question they kind of already answered. Howard, I don't know, trying to get his voice out there, get a rise out of somebody or something. We already talked about this. Maybe that was for like the fair weather fans, or hey, the Flyers are still hit us the playoffs again. What's going on over there? Like, I guess something like for them, as people who barely tune in, because we already discussed this. You don't just give up your draft capital to make the playoffs now because we want it so badly. You know what we really want? We want to win the cup. That's what I really want more than anything. Playoffs are great. I want to win the cup. Their way is the best way to get towards the cup. The cheap way that Howard Eskin is kind of laying out here, that's going to be great for this year, maybe, but definitely not good for the future. And it's something that was already asked and talked about. So it's kind of a silly question at this point.
Yeah, maybe he showed up late. Yeah, because you're right. They did answer that. And in my opinion, he answered way longer than he should have there. But okay. Yeah.
I got deja vu.
So our next question, Jack, is going to be about Matvei Michkov. Let's see what Keith Jones has to say about Matvei Michkov potentially speeding up the Flyers timeline. Here's the question. We'll get to the response.
How did the arrival and the development and the play of Michkov affect the timeline? I know that a year and a half ago you didn't know what was going to happen, but he came, he played great. And are you ahead of where you thought you would be?
There's no doubt that it helps, Marcus. It helps in the the Flyer fan community as well. He's a very excitable player to watch. He embraces trying to be the best. It's an interesting thing to watch him operate. So we're really excited, obviously, that he's here. He's going into year 2. So that's always another challenge for young players that got their first taste of the National Hockey League. But he is a driven type of personality that wants to be a star in this league, and we really appreciate what he brings. So yeah, he does help us, get to a point where we continue to advance maybe a little bit earlier because he's here, and we need to help and add players to that mix.
All right, so look, well, let me hear your thoughts first on that, Jack, before I figure out how I wanted to say what I was going to say there.
I mean, for me, this is pretty open and shut. You didn't expect to get him. They get him over early because remember, it was like 3 years contract he had over there in Russia, and they were worried if he comes over at all. They get him over. Only a year passes. They get him over. That obviously moves up your timeline because he's here with you and he's doing what he's doing, you feel more comfortable about taking other shots to support him and go for it. So I don't think it derailed them too much. I still think they had 2026 circled to do something, but I definitely think the shelf life of a coach like Torts was easier to end, because you know that you can go, depending on who's available, for the next turn the corner coach, because you have this guy already doing here and doing what he's doing. So obviously a superstar coming and playing on your team, but playing like a superstar, or the early goings of what's going to be a superstar, gives you that confidence to say, okay, well, now that we have a superstar, we can do this, and that, and start to win now. And to me, yeah, I think it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, so I was going to try to read a little bit into that more and ask, should he speed it up? Should it be sped up because he's here? But I think it's just going to happen naturally because he's a good player, and you're going to want to build around them. So I won't waste too much time with that thought there, and see if we can skip to our next question here. All right, so we're going to move on to our next question here, and I believe Jonesy is asked about the Flyers having a lot of talent at wing, and maybe they're not as strong yet at the center position. So let's listen in.
You mentioned about stars selling, and you need those guys at the top of the lineup. That said, the two guys who probably under 22 that have the highest potential in the organization are Michkov and Martone.
Yeah.
What's your degree of concern that both of them are wingers? That none of them play the center position, the defense position, the goalie position, that are generally viewed to be the premier positions when you're building a cup contender?
Yeah, I'm happy that we have them. If there was, stars at those superstar potential players at those positions when we drafted, then of course you're having a different discussion. But I'm just really excited about what they bring. And to me, if you look at Kucherov, he's a winger. Yeah, I'll take him any day. You know what I mean? Like, he's a superstar. So yeah, whenever you can get those type of talents, you take them. And obviously, you want to add pieces around to make sure that they complement them, and a very good young center iceman coming up would certainly be something that we're always going to be looking for. We feel like we have a couple in our system now, but they're going to take time to develop. So we'll be patient.
You like that response, Jack?
Kind of like what we discussed in part one of this episode. I mean, just get talent, just get best players available. You're not going to say no to a Kaprizov in free agency if he wants to come to Philly, because you can, McDavid and Eichel re-sign or something, and center is not really available. You're not going to say no. You're just going to get good players. There was one more part I had to that, now I can't remember. But yeah, that's basically what it tells me. It's like, it tells you how they felt about Hagens in the draft. I mean, they really loved Martone, and they weren't too hot on Hagens because this need at center was paramount, and they went winger. They said, we want the best player of it on our board. We want the best player. And to me, that's probably the right move. It's just, how the team makeup is. There's going to be issues, but that's get good first, then mold the team later. So I understand that. I mostly agree with that. I do hope they have a plan if they have just crazy good wingers, but I can't really complain.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thought. When that draft was going on, Martone could be a star, and if you're in a rebuild, you want to acquire and draft stars, whatever it is. I think they still need talent at center. So, but what I did like is that he said they're always going to be looking. They're not satisfied. They didn't trade for Zegras. They didn't re-sign Cates and say we're satisfied at center. They didn't draft Nesbitt and Luchanko and say we got our guys. To me, it sounded like they know they still need that guy. So that's kind of what I heard there. All right, next question.
The one persistent problem over the 2 years has obviously been the goaltending, right? And I know, your first season, part of that was out of your control, but you could also make the case that maybe something you could have made a move to stabilize that and maybe make the playoffs. last year it didn't work with Fedotov and Kolosov. I guess it's a two-part question. One, in hindsight, were there some mistakes made when it comes to the goaltending, and how do you view the goaltending now and moving forward in the system?
Yeah, I don't know that there were mistakes made. I think we brought in players that have been drafted by the organization to give them an opportunity. I think there was adjustments that we hoped would occur. Their ability to adjust would occur quicker than it did. I wouldn't write off either guy in Fedotov or Kolosov. Kolosov's obviously younger and is an extremely athletic goaltender. If he can put all the pieces together in the future, he could turn into a very good goaltender. So, oh yeah, he'll be here. Yeah, that's and we're excited about that too. So he has an opportunity, just like everybody else, to come in and show what he has. And developmentally, I think we would prefer that last year he spent a little more time in the American Hockey League. It just was not in the cards. So I wouldn't do it differently, but I'm excited about the depth that we have. And Dan Vladar is somebody that we targeted, and we're very happy that he's part of the mix. And then the other guys are going to have to, really show that they have the ability to get there again.
All right. A lot there. Question was asked about the Flyers goaltending. Jonesy mentioned earlier in the press conference that he likes Urson, believes in Urson. We heard him mention Vladar there, who I think Vladar sounds like he was brought in to sort of calm things down, at least in the little pipeline they got going on there. But Otov's obviously back. He's getting paid $3+ million a year to be back. Kolosov, I liked his response, Jack, and I'm sure you did too there. Whoever asked the question, I think, implied that there were mistakes made or potentially mistakes made last year. And we can all have our opinions. At the end of the day, though, like what's right is right kind of thing. And the Flyers drafted this kid to play hockey. Jonesy said that there. He expected him to play for the Flyers or play for the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, to do what the Flyers were asking. What'd you think there, Jack? It sounds like they expect Kolosov to be back again for this season.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he said there he'll be in camp. It was when he was like, yeah, he'll be there. And, I don't like to lose an asset, so that's great. Hopefully something happens, because right now it's pretty stuffed, especially, God forbid, you bring Carter Hart back. I'm not going to go down that road, but I'm just saying it's already kind of somebody's going to be odd man out between Yarnison, Urson, Vladar, Fedotov, and Kolosov. That's 5 goalies for, in my opinion, 4 spots between the NHL and the AHL. And he's right. Everything he said about Kolosov is right, except for he kind of danced around we kind of let him, I don't want to say pick a shot, but you had 3 goalies up here. Let's not forget. That was outrageously bad. I don't think it was necessarily a mistake. And he was also alluding to not trading for a goalie when they lost Hart, when they were a playoff team basically 2 years ago. You don't really give up assets when you're rebuilding. So that to me also was silly. Mistakes, strong word, but there was definitely fault to go around. It was definitely a bad situation. And it was a kind of a one blemish on what I think has been a very good regime so far. But the way that the goaltending 3-headed monster, and I say that hand in, tongue in cheek, was not handled well. And hopefully, if Kolosov's coming to camp, hopefully cooler heads prevailed. They're like, you want a shot in the NHL, do it the right way. So hopefully that's what's happening there. And if that's the case, great. If we're headed for some other 3-headed monster situation, that's going to look real, real bad. It looks like Jonesy, I'm being a little dramatic here, almost took offense to the question a little bit. He's like, there was mistakes. And I kind of agree. Your hands are kind of tied. You just saw what happened with Cutter Gauthier. You cannot just be losing assets. So you try to have your cake and eat it too a little bit. Naturally, it kind of blows up in your face. But look, they can stand now and be like, look, Alexei, we gave you a shot. You think any other NHL is going to give you, team's going to give you a shot without putting you in the minors first? Come to camp, push for the team, play wherever, minors most likely, and push to make the team, because we didn't exactly bring in Dominik Hasek to solidify our goaltending here. So anything can happen. It's how it should have been last year, but here we are. So maybe we're in a situation like that from looking at it positively.
I wonder if he has an easier time in Lehigh Valley with Fedotov down there. You know, they play the same position, speak the same language, from the same country. He's got a guy to room with, whatever the hell it is, to make him more comfortable. I'm wondering if they have things a little bit more figured out this year. Like, I don't know how they view Kolosov. It sounds like they still believe that he can be a good goalie. They go out and bring in Vladar. He said he still believes in Urson. So not sure where Kolosov fits in long term. Fedotov, I still feel like, is a placeholder here. Bjarnason's down there. He's the guy that I want to see develop. And then if Kolosov somehow works out, outstanding. And Fedotov, he's just going to burn. He's going to be this year's, who was the guy they got from the Kings, Jack?
Cal Peterson.
Fedotov for me is this year's Cal Peterson,
I mean, you have Vladar and Urson here, theoretically. And let's say all three of them are in Lehigh Valley. I don't want to see Fedotov that much, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I would rather, as much as people are shitting on Kolosov, and rightfully so, he's still the young asset. Bjarnason 1, Kolosov 2. Fedotov's a nice guy. Really don't care what happens with him. And he should probably be like, I'm making $3.5 million or whatever he's making. Just be happy and keep Kolosov happy, so we hopefully see the best version of him. So
yeah. Fedotov's probably going to be the rubber guy. Like, he's going to be the guy that balances between NHL, AHL. Like, I don't think anyone's going to be claiming him off waivers or anything. And you never make it through a year with only playing 2 goalies. So he'll probably be the bounce back and forth guy, and let Kolosov and Bjarnason get most of the games. Okay. All right. So I'm going to move on to the last question, and it's asked by Dan Hilferty to Keith Jones, which I thought was interesting that he asked in front of everybody here. So let's play this out. This will be the last question, and we'll move on.
So we'll see how it plays out.
So, Jonesy, I have one question for you. Is that am I allowed to do that one? Sorry.
I don't know.
What for you would add up to a successful season?
Yeah, continued growth for sure. Players continuing to advance, our team being better. And I feel very confident that we will be. I'm just really excited to see the group of players that we have. I'm excited about our young players that continue to push. There's going to be a lot more competition in camp than there has been previously. When you watch the players that you've been a part of drafting start to grow and get better, it's exciting. So I'm really looking forward to seeing some of these guys get into the mix and push our veteran players to be better.
All right. So that wraps up the State of the Organization press conference. But I thought it was interesting that Hilferty asked Jonesy in front of everybody, and maybe Howard Eskin or whoever asked the question originally should have asked Jonesy that question, since Jonesy's the guy, sort of helping dictate the success. But I think to players, not players, fans or people who are not as invested in what the Flyers are doing, maybe they look at last year, the year before, and see no playoffs again. They're coming into this year. Maybe they're excited for Flyers hockey, and they hear, it's not the be all end all to make the playoffs for success. I think if you're maybe a casual fan, you don't want to hear that. So I think that's where Howard Eskin came from. Like, he's kind of a casual reporter with the Flyers. He's more football, baseball, basketball. He's not shy about it either. To me, that's how he came off when he asked, what does success look like if it's not making the playoffs? And he's representing those fans that will casually, there's nothing on, let me put the Flyers on. They're not making the playoffs again. What the hell are they doing? Whereas if you're invested and you listen to our show, you do a podcast, you listen to all these other shows, you kind of know what's been going on the last 3 years. And fortunately, we now have leadership within the organization. Like, they didn't have to do this today. They didn't have to come out and answer these questions, give the state of the organization. Danny Briere, I mean, he's going to come out next week, but like, why are we hearing from Keith Jones and Dan Hilferty? They're coming out, answering questions. They're being transparent. They're keeping fans in the loop. They don't have to do that. You know what I mean? So I think he asked Jonesy again, you know, what's the goal? What does success look like? And bottom line, it's growth. They're trying to meet a goal, and he wants to see them get closer to that goal. And, you know, making the playoffs could be for next year. Who knows?
Which is exactly how a rebuild works.
Yeah. Yep. And so, you know, all in all, it was decent little press conference. Certainly appreciated that they got together to do that. And Flyers hockey this weekend, Jack, rookie game. We're 45 minutes into part 2. What if we saved any topics that we didn't cover? I mean, was there anything that we talked goalies?
Kind of in the.
Yeah.
That's really it.
Yeah. Okay. So if you didn't listen to part 1 already, this is a 2-part episode. Part 1's already out. Go click on that if you're watching part 2. Thanks for hanging out with us for this long. Before we wrap up the episode, Jack is going to tell us a little bit about Fans of Philly.
All right, guys, quick timeout. Well, at the end of the show here, because if you're a diehard Philly fan, you need to hear about this. Fans of Philly is the ultimate way to hit the road with the Birds, the Flyers, the Phils, or even the Sixers. We're talking full travel packages, your hotel, your transportation, and yes, the tailgates that are basically legendary at this point, all taken care of for you. No stress, no scrambling for tickets, no worrying about where you're staying. You just show up, throw on your jersey, and enjoy the ride with fellow die-hard Philly fans. So whether it's flying out to see the Eagles take over an opponent's arena, cheering on the Flyers in enemy territory, or making it a full weekend getaway for the Phillies and Sixers games, Fans of Phillies have you covered. Trust me, this is the closest you'll get to feeling like the players when they roll into town, because the takeover is real. So check them out Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and start planning your next Phillies road trip today. That's Fans of Philly, fansofphilly.com, where every away game feels like a home game.
Thank you very much, Jack. And that is going to take us to the end of our episode. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, make sure to subscribe and help us on our continued quest for 2,000 YouTube subscribers. Like and leave a comment for us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Set alerts so you're the first to know when we drop a new show. For all of our episodes, articles, and updates, head over to hwhockey.net. For Jack, I'm Jim. Don't forget to keep it high, keep it wide. We'll see you next time on HW Hockey. Good night.